Alright, welcome back, and this is where we pick our discussion of the day. Remember, it all matters to do with education and the choice of courses. Well, in 2021, the government realized a list of courses that were ranked priority areas based on the Big Four agenda. Real estate, build environment and design courses, construction, agriculture and food science were among the courses ranked top. However, KUTV's data paints a picture of a shunned courses, raising questions over the varsity program that were considered significant. Joining us in the discussion is Paul Ngugi, chairman of International Non-Governmental Organization and Human Resource Roundtable. Well, thank you so much for making time to speak to us on very important topic. Well, I'll begin by asking you this question. What could be the reason behind this, boycott of courses? I mean, in one course, like 18 courses registering one student each. And of course, a staggering number of 104 courses, program registering a maximum of 10 students. What is happening?
I would actually even say that even actually the students who are actually supposed to pick these particular courses are absolutely not even aware of these particular courses.
Okay.
And this could be because even of the lack of cascading this information to the relevant people, and even just lack of that information and knowledge even to the teachers who even help these students in picking some of these courses. So I think that would be the first thing that I may want to say, the lack of information. There's no cascading of this particular information to the people. And even the people who are actually helping the students to pick these particular courses also are not even aware. They don't even have this particular knowledge. Yeah.
All right. So what should one consider before applying for these courses?
I think a couple of things which are very important is that I was just even looking at the World Economic Forum report for 2023.
All right.
And one of the drivers is even about technological innovation for the next 5 years. That's what actually will be driving courses and even business transformation. Okay. So one of the things I think which needs to be there is even actually to be aligned to the trends and even reading of these particular reports by the relevant people. That's quite important. So secondly, even after reading these particular reports, we are aware it's not everybody who will actually read these particular reports. But however, the people responsible for passing this knowledge to the students need to be educated. This need actually for greater awareness. And the other thing I just want to say is that people need to be involved, even in the developing of these particular courses, industry experts, among others.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. When you look at the Big Four agenda, rather the courses that were lined along the Big Four agenda, one of them, when you look at the real estate, we have construction there, agriculture. It's really funny to notice that in a course like, let's say, dryland, and we have seen courses like even the blue economy, such courses registering one student, and yet these are courses that has great potential that student can actually tap into it. Now, this begs the question, is it, even as we talk about the lack of the understanding, is there, a genuine, or rather a gap that exists between, the labor force and actually the field that links these courses?
Definitely there is, because even when it comes, for instance, to the identification of these particular 4 goals or the agenda, which is very important because a country must be driven by a particular vision or a particular national agenda. What lacks now is the practical approach, the pragmatic approach now between this particular agenda and perhaps even now the people actually who develop these particular courses. Because if there was, then it would have been very easy. Okay, for instance, in case I look at even issues about dryland, developing of dryland.
All right.
I come from Kajiado, a county which is quite dry, and where this will be arable. So I'm just thinking about in the sense that if there would be partnership between now the government and, for instance, even other people, other collaborators, this will be much easier, because this now will be cascaded to people. We have dry land, but it's still arable, and therefore this will drive the agenda for people now to take relevant courses even in developing of the dry land.
Okay.
And perhaps just quickly to add is also the issue, like for instance, if we've talked about real estate, which is actually even now actually aligned now to even to the new agenda of housing, which is quite important. But now there's an existing gap between now that particular agenda and even the people who are supposed to undertake this particular area going forward. Yeah. So I think it's actually the existing gap in terms of breaking it down and also making it quite practical.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, a real question here: how does the labor force look like? The Kenyan labor force.
Of course, we are all aware that there is a growing unemployment in this country, and one of the things is that people actually come from college, come from universities, they graduate with fantastic degree, with distinction, but when they go to the market, they find that things have shifted completely, and therefore where they actually can enter into the market, things are different. And so one of the reasons is that as people actually are taking these particular courses, they only align, for instance, is that I need to finish my degree so that I can become an engineer. But when you finish actually these particular courses, there are no engineering jobs, but there are other jobs that actually you can actually fit in. So there's actually that problem of like, are you employable? The lack of actually employability skills is actually what lacks. Because you could fit in a particular area, but you can't because of perhaps how you've been trained, and also how also you have been modeled. And in most cases, you have not been mentored also as you come out. There are certain opportunities actually that you can come in. And just also to quickly add is that also the lack of entrepreneurship as actually is go through the education line lacks, because there would be something that you could even be doing even before you graduate, so that also you can fit within the world.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, the reason why I've asked this question is because when you look at, based on the KUTV, of course, data, when you look at the course like education, which has the highest number of enrollment, we have commerce, then we have technology there. These are, it's like these are some of the courses that many students believe to be, of course, let's say marketable in the workplace. And this, does it, pinpoint the challenges in the labor market, or rather in the workforce, that, drive these students to actually determine, or rather decide, this is the type of course that I want, and this is not the course that I want?
Absolutely. For instance, in case I look at even like education, I can even quickly attribute it to some of the pronouncements that we had, especially the last 1 year, where there's been an existing gap, especially for teachers. And I think what has been lacking actually is more about money. There was no budgetary allocation for teachers. Now, in the last 1 year, look at the pronouncement that the government wants to employ as many teachers as possible. And you can actually see the surge. Quite a number of people actually were employed. That, in my view, has led to a number of people now saying, I think the gap and the opportunities are in education. Secondly, I'm also looking at the emerging trend, especially of privatization of schools. There are more private schools now coming up in various places. In fact, in some of the counties, actually, there are more private schools than actually government school. So this is actually another opportunity which is coming in. And therefore, people are feeling like, upon graduation, I'll get actually a job straight on. There, I can actually start from somewhere. And when I actually look at the area of technology, there is actually an emerging issue about artificial intelligence. The fact that actually businesses are being driven by technological innovation. People actually see a gap in that already, because even before actually we actually even graduate, there are certain opportunities. You can even start actually developing apps. You can actually start now developing website, among other things. So that's actually another area in terms of opportunities. So when people actually see that, then they find that I think it's easy actually to pick actually a course which is actually in technology. In commerce, when we are dealing especially with this particular generation, they feel like instead of me only just going for to get a job, I could do something. And especially in case I have knowledge in finance, I have knowledge in commerce, I have knowledge in marketing, I can even start actually marketing for my services, even the products that I'll be developing. So quickly people see an opportunity there going forward.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, do you think it's about time we go back to the drawing board? Because statistics itself is disturbing and worrisome, even to the labor force. For example, the courses that have registered, low number of intake. In the near future, should we go with this trend? So what will become of such industries that depend on labor force from such courses, and yet the turnout is quite significantly low? Is it about now we go back to the drawing board and restructure some of our courses or rather education system to fit in the labor market?
Definitely, very important. I think it's just about time that people should stop actually just being on the boardroom or in the ivory tower and developing course content, developing courses which they believe will be fit for purpose. And maybe even to go back, from what I actually understand is that some times ago, and especially at the dawn of independence, the industry captains actually were involved in developing the content, developing actually what is relevant for the market. So it's just about time that we need to have actually the decision makers, the key stakeholders, not actually ignoring this generation, because they know exactly what is there. They need to come to the boardroom and start developing these things together. And there needs to be deliberate effort by the key stakeholders on thinking about the importance of research and development, because actually it comes up with the trends. And then the other thing that we cannot ignore, especially when I was looking at some of the reports, the World Economic Reports, and which also concentrates on surveying quite a number of key organizations, key economies. It's very important also to look at some of these particular reports, because they actually give projections. They give a particular forecast. Like actually I had mentioned, for the next 5 years, the driving force, especially when it comes to business transformation, will be technology. It doesn't mean after 5 years, technology will not be important. However, for minimum literacy, you will need to be technologically savvy going forward. So looking at these particular reports and sitting down with key stakeholders will be quite important. And then I think I had also earlier mentioned the importance actually of creating awareness for educators, for the teachers. I know sometimes in school we have guidance and counseling teachers, but to what extent also do they understand, especially what actually is changing? So the Ministry of Education and the key stakeholders really ensuring that there is actually cascading of this information and training people. And I know sometimes also we have mentors who also go to high schools to advise students, but to what extent do we have standardization of this particular approach? Yeah.
Well, you actually spoke to my curiosity when you talk about research and development. And these are some of the areas that many people could actually tap into this potential. Well, from human resource point of view, what is it that employers look out for, especially for the employees?
Okay, and I'll even talk about especially currently and even going forward. Employers are looking for employees who can also multitask, who do not necessarily have to do one thing, and then that's over. They're looking at people who actually can do more than actually one role or more than one task. People who actually can understand the language of the business quickly, who can represent the organization irrespective of the function that actually they hold or the role they hold. They can get into marketing and speak the marketing language. Also, employers also looking for employees who actually can engage, can communicate. And therefore the rising, I know before we used to talk about the soft skills, people are talking about the human skills. You may know so much about your technical area, but can you engage? Can you communicate? Because you can't just sit perhaps in your corner and not necessarily communicate and engage with people. So going beyond your technical expertise to do more things, to engage, to communicate, and also to understand the business language. That's quite important. And then finally, the other thing also employers also are looking for is also people who also are aware about the industry trends. The people who read, they research, they are able to go to the boardroom and talk about those particular trends and make them relevant to their industry, make them relevant to their organization. Yeah.
All right. Well, one of the things we cannot actually, fold our hands or even be blind to the fact that most of the decisions that, have led to this, now the state that we are in, is because of the labor market outside there. Majority of people go to school, graduate with skills that are needed, but at the end of the day, they don't get job. So when information spreads like this course, or rather this field, is quite very difficult to get employment. So that discourage people from actually enrolling to such courses, because they will see this is a waste of time and resources and money for that matter. So from employers' point of view, do you think this is a challenge that should be passed to you? The ball should be passed on your table so that you can address this and even see the potential where maybe you can try to address such things to see that next time the next generation of learners that are joining into the labor market actually have the skills that employer is looking out for.
And I think it's also coming at the right time, because now the approach that we are getting is more about competencies, right, actually from the foundation.
Okay.
It's about actually now thinking about creative thinking, being analytical, design thinking, more about even solving complex problems, as opposed maybe just to cramming and waiting for the exams, so that the assessment is a little bit more continuous.
All right.
So I believe this is the right opportunity that is coming, and it's very important that we have this particular staggering statistic that we are having, and also the right time for even the key stakeholders, including even the human resource practitioners and the educators, and those even the political leaders now coming together and say, I think this is enough. We need to address this particular issue, because what's happening, there's nothing as bad as going for 5 years, 4 years, and then when you come out, you don't have an opportunity going forward. It discourages actually the people who are much younger than you are. Yeah.
Well, hold on to that thought. Of course, we are taking another short break. When we come back, still the discussion still continues. Remember, we are talking about the courses and the choices that leads to one to choose one course over the other, and that is the discussion we are having right here. So we're taking a short break. When we come back, we'll still be diving into this particular discussion.
Technology, science, innovation, ICT and research. These are the ingredients upon which the solutions to the 21st century problems are founded. In a world that is rapidly changing, it's all hands on deck to ensure a balance in all fields of life. Women, young and old, are also in the front line, breaking the glass ceiling, becoming thought leaders in the larger tech space. Not forgetting other societies marginalized. And when the tech Avengers come together, we inch closer to a much safer, efficient and sustainable world. What we view as a norm in today's advanced world was just an idea, and for nostalgic reasons, we trace back to the iconic days to bring you the retro tech. On Tech Innovation Show, we encapsulate all the pillars of the fourth industrial revolution, decoded in a language, all for one for all. Every Monday at 8:30 as we push the mantra, keep learning something new each and every day. Only on KUTV, a new experience.
Kipindi hewani ni mitindo ya kipwani, endapo ndio mwanzo unajiunga nami. Leo nitakuwa na mapishi ya kipwani, kutakuwa na mambo matamu sana.
Kwa leo tulikuwa tumepanga kutatia chakula ama upishi aina ya snacks inaitwa samosa.
Acha mwanzo ninyunyizie hii limao kwanza. Nisikie pia mimi nisikie ladha yake na utamu wake. Ninyunyize limao. Opa.
What are some of the ways through which you can develop these skills so that you are comfortably fitting into the job?
You have to put yourself in positions where you are uncomfortable. Uncomfortable in the sense that you are not clear about what to do.
Because I used to work a corporate job before. So when I left, I happened to visit someone's farm around this area.
So this project is called Security Breach Detector and Awareness Familiarize. It is is meant to be used to detect, detonate explosive.
We'll tackle all the tough issues, discuss all the weird moments, and hopefully share a few laughs along the way.
Right, welcome back, and the discussion continues. Remember Paul Ngugi, rather, I beg your pardon for that. That is International Non-Governmental Organization and Human Resource Roundtable is here with us, and we are just talking about the issues, or rather the reasons that will lead to some, learners actually shunning some courses over the others, and this is very disturbing owing to the number of statistics and given the fact that it is one of the big 4 agendas that was put there, and courses that many thought this could be very instrumental even to the learners as far as the building of the nation is concerned. Yes, Mr. Ngugi was saying something before we went on break.
Cool, thank you. I think it was something to do with what needs to be done, perhaps just going forward. And one of the things that I was saying is that there will be these particular courses which have been identified, but I see a gap in terms of especially people knowing exactly what does it entail.
All right.
And demystifying it going forward, which I think needs to be done. I think there needs to be a deliberate effort by the young talents who will be undertaking these particular courses, knowing exactly what they need to undertake. And that can increase their appetite for taking some of these courses, which may look irrelevant, but perhaps when they're actually properly explained, they will actually look relevant.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, talking about the appetite for these courses, what is the nature of workforce and how adaptable is it?
I think what happens, even especially with COVID-19, we used to talk about the future of work, but that was accelerated, completely brought forward by quite a number of years. So in fact, when we talk about adaptability, this actually is very, very important, because the workforce now is no longer looking at where there are physical spaces. There's actually the space even of remote working completely. So in these particular cases, actually, quite a number of workforce are looking for opportunities which are more flexible. They are looking for opportunities which can handle a hybrid kind of a space, where sometimes I can go to the office, sometimes I can actually work from home. So the workspace has completely shifted. You can actually work from anywhere. The most important thing the workforce is looking for is the output and the impact of what you're doing, but not just being seen around. The other thing which is quite important in terms of the workforce is looking at what is now being called work-life integration. Can I integrate my life in my work? Because that never is. It used to be like, for instance, just come to work. We don't care about actually your life. Now it's about, in fact, there are some people actually who resign from their job in terms of the workforce to look for opportunities which are a bit more flexible, where you can accommodate even your family life and even just also mental health. The other thing which is very important in terms of the workforce is about inclusivity. Inclusivity and diversity, which never used to be there in the past. I think now it's more about an inclusive approach across even generation, not necessarily even in terms of the gender. Yeah.
All right. Well, when you talk about the input, and I now want to draw your attention to some of the rejected courses. One of them we have like forestry, dryland, the way I said, fishery, courses with great potential. But let's talk about mostly the one that deals with the climate action. Now, we are talking about, measures to mitigate, climate. And this is area that even the government is really focusing. Remember, there is a campaign to at least plant 15 billion trees. And these are some of the areas, or rather the courses that probably many people will now tap to those potential, now owing that to the fact that there is vigorous campaign towards climate change. Don't you think this is where maybe most of these learners will be missing the point?
Absolutely. And remember, even what I mentioned is that some of these courses sometimes are not actually rejected because of lack of knowledge. They need to be actually alignment in terms of the relevance between this particular agenda. Like now we are talking about 15 billion trees which needs to be planted. We need people who actually needs to be trained on forestry. But this information has not been passed in terms of being cascaded. And when it comes even to picking of these particular choices, who are involved in some of the cases? Difficult, because sometimes the people who are involved could be peers who also don't understand some of these particular courses, and they will go for some of those courses which are a bit more popular because of the reasons that I have talked about, like for instance, cultural beliefs. Some of them could be religious beliefs, among others. It may be even, for instance, upon certain graduation, there are certain people who got jobs that others did not get. So that lack of information on especially the relevance of this particular courses is missing. And then the alignment of these particular goals, the national goals, with the new courses. Because I look at forestry would be so important, especially aligned to the green economy, where we are going. It needs to be aligned even with courses like environment. People need actually to be informed. There needs to be greater awareness of these particular courses, and people will actually take it. So I think actually we missed a point, especially this year, in terms of especially aggressively aligning the key national agendas with the courses. And you can even look at now the dry land. We are talking about food security, and yet there are people who are not taking actually courses on food security. So it's a bit paradoxical.
All right. Yeah. Well, you talk about lack of information, people not being, aware, as many might say, being sensitized. But who is to be blamed for this?
I would say, one, the people who develop these particular courses, and I would talk about, for instance, in this, definitely they are developed by key stakeholders in the academic realm, universities and also colleges. I think I would say there's a problem in people working in silos. In most cases, they'll be like, yes, we saw it. We saw perhaps certain leaders saying we need these particular courses to be developed. But when it comes actually to working together, there's more actually people working in silos. I would have suggested that instead of maybe the academic gurus sitting together and developing this particular content, I think even working even with the younger people will even actually help in terms of even having some catchy words in terms of even what do we call these particular programs. Maybe it has been forestry for a very long time, from 1963. Right. If you include actually the younger people, they will come with a bit better words, better contents to make it even more practical going forward. I think so. The lack of inclusivity is actually what actually has led into this. Okay. Yeah.
Well, when you talk about the lack of inclusivity and of course lack of enough education, sensitization, so what is the role of employer in all this?
I feel like, for instance, the employer sits and wait for people to be churned out, and when they come out, that's when you take over, especially as the employer, which in my view is a bit wrong. The employer needs to be involved, especially at the stage even of either developing these particular courses, to say things have changed out there. So this is actually our input. And in these particular cases, I'm just thinking about they need to be a place for instance, the Institute of Human Resource Management. They need to be a place for instance, FKE in this particular conversation. There need to be conversation for the trade unions. So there need to be some kind of caucus in terms of like what is changing. This is our input going forward. So what I feel sometimes is that the employer waits until people actually graduate, and then you say, this is your bunch. And the other thing that I would say is that the employer also can be involved at a particular stage, especially during the mentoring stage, coaching stage, when the students also are in the university, coming with the industry expertise, coming with the practical information, and even helping especially these particular students now in this particular journey, and really being practical, saying, as you graduate, you may have done this, but things have changed, and therefore this is a journey that actually you can take. So having more practical mentoring programs. Like the Institute of Human Resource Management has started a program which is called Transcend. But in this particular case, it will be the people already who have graduated in mentoring them to be a bit more experienced.
Okay, briefly, and this will serve as your parting shot. When you talk from employers' point of view, don't you think it's now time to kick the ball? And of course, how will you, of course, give your solution even as we wind up this particular discussion?
I think in most cases we say opportunities, you don't have to for the opportunities to come to your door. This is the right opportunity for employers. This is the right opportunity for the key stakeholders who are waiting for people to graduate to join them, to really work very closely with tertiary institutions, to knock on their doors. And I believe this is possible. I have seen it working. I have been involved in mentoring in some of the universities. Knock on their doors, come together, because this is our country. We need to ensure that the people actually who are out there are employable, and also they are practical, they are creative thinkers. So I would say let the employers not wait for the university to invite them. They can actually extend that particular invitation, or they can actually knock on the doors, because if they don't do that and they wait for these particular people to graduate, then that's a bit fatal.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, Paul Ngugi, asante sana for making time.